Reaching out for something you got to feel. Or clutching to what you thought was real. Kicking at a dead horse pleases you. No way of showing your gratitude. So many things you don't want to do. What is and what have you got to lose? What the hell? What the hell? What is it you think you're gonna find? Hypocrite, hypocrite. Boredom's a tick to the boring mind. Struggle with it. It's what you find. Struggle with it. You're ruined. Struggle with it. You steal your own coffin. The struggling with it.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Pirate Radio. I am your host who needs zero introduction. Let's get some business out of the way now that we're sponsored here. If you're so inclined, go to diefree.com for dye-free codes, rifle accessories, among other things that they offer. Use code TOXIC10 at checkout. That will save you 10% off. So it'll basically cover your tax. Dye free, if you're not familiar, they have the Tiger Claw. They have an AR handle, pistol grip, whatever, which I have here. This is their AR grip. And they have this new little thing called the Quick Stop, which is this little guy, which works as like a barrier stop, finger stop, and has a sling swivel in it, which is pretty cool. I haven't got to test it out yet. Still pretty new, but they sent it to me. That's pretty cool. And then they also do one of my favorite things is they give you stickers for all, or at least most of their stuff. And the packaging is pretty cool. This is something, what is this called? The Dose Boot. So this you can put on the end of a Gen 3 Magpul mag. You get 2 extra rounds. Got some texture there. Supposed to act as a monopod. It's kind of weird. The Tiger Claw is their foregrip, if you will, / barrier stop, what have you. Kind of a cool little thing. Pretty good texture, nothing too aggressive, just good enough. This weekend only, they're doing a free delivery with no minimums with code Where's My Tracking, and it will stack with the 10% off. So, yeah. Sports channel, buy shit. It's cool shit. Go buy shit. Anyway, so let's get into the show. So earlier this week on the Twitters or the X, if you're dumb, who was it? Doc Strangelove posted a meme. This meme. With the caption that said, what did it say? Gun opinions that get you this reaction. And there were some pretty good ones on there. Basically, you're going to stand alone in your gun opinions. My contribution to it, I didn't think too hard, but basically I said, get the flashlight off of your carry pistol. And there's a number of reasons that you don't necessarily want a flashlight on your carry pistol. Now, when I said carry pistol, I meant like your CCW, your daily carry. Do not carry a flashlight on your daily carry is my advice. You can take that advice if you want. I'm not someone who is not versed in having lights on pistols. This, by the way, is my Dagger 9. This stays in the nightstand, so I do kind of want that on there. The reason I believe that you don't want a flashlight on your carry pistol is, so the root of thought is I need a flashlight on this because in a low light situation, I need to be able to illuminate the thing that I may or may not have to fire at. Yeah, I kind of understand that. The problem is that if you illuminate that thing and it is, say, I don't know, a cop or a loved one or your own dog or whatever, you've just violated one of the rules of the gun safety. And you flag the shit out of them. Possibly with your finger on the trigger, at least very, very close, and you're definitely thinking about it. So there's that one. And then one of the bigger ones that I don't think a lot of people think about. So This is the Streamlight TLR-1. It's a pretty popular pistol flashlight. And then this is a Chinesium knockoff that is super bright, has some issues. That's for a review on the channel later on. But this is a popular light. This is another light here that's a SIG light that's a lot more compact. The reason I bring this up is when you go and buy a holster, most holsters are going to index off of the light, which isn't a huge issue necessarily, especially if you have a very popular light. The problem is when you get into the combination of light and pistol, you can run into some issues with finding a holster. As far as I know, the only the only holsters that will hold the SIG optic are SIG holsters, or people who are in the SIG holster making business. So there's that problem. And then when you get into, so let's say you have your TLR-1 light, which is very, very popular. Surefire 300 is another one that is, those are like the two most popular that you'll see that most holster manufacturers will index off of because they seem to be the most popular lights. That's fine. The problem is if you have kind of a funky pistol, it doesn't even have to be an obscure pistol, but if we're going to index off the light, then our pistol is kind of irrelevant at that point. And if you get there's a lot of holster companies that will make something for, let's say, like a Walther or a Canik. Okay. Walther and Canik are pretty popular pistols, and they're very good pistols. The problem you run into is now when you add that light to your Walther or your Canik, your options for holsters now get cut almost in half. Because if you're a holster maker, obviously you want to make holsters for the most popular pistols and have those in stock and spend your R&D on those specific pistols. And your R&D is a little different when you're doing the pistol and then the pistol and the light. So you're going to compartmentalize. You're going to, not devote so many assets to, well, I need every single pistol with the Surefire 300 and the TLR-1 lights. You're just not going to do that. So if you have a Glock 19 that has a I just can't do it. TLR-1 or 7 or the Surefire 300, your holster options are pretty much endless. Glock 17s, Glock 19s, things of that nature, Glock 45s, very, very popular pistols. If you want a holster for your Ruger 5.7 like this, and, if you want to do the 1,000 lumen light or whatever, your holster options are pretty limited to begin with, and they're very limited once you add the light. So that's another reason that I don't think you need a light on your carry pistol. I have a Beretta APX A1 as well that can take a light. I don't have a light on it. I do have a holster for it. I actually have a really nice holster. It's my tactical duty belt. My ex-members belt, which is a really good belt, by the way, made in America, veterans, what have you. So I've got the APX A1 holster from Safariland, which is, Safariland's a major holster manufacturer. I don't believe they even offered one with a light. I don't think that was an option to get a Beretta APX A1 with an indexing light. Now I can get one optics cut. That's fine. Everybody's doing that because that's less material. You don't have to R&D an optics cut for a pistol necessarily on most holsters. You just delete material because it's going to index somewhere down here off of the barrel, off of the trigger guard, something like that. So your R&D is simple. You just remove material and it becomes a little more easy. But when you do the flashlight, now you're limiting yourself. So that was my contribution to the whole thing. There were some very interesting contributions. One of the best ones, one that got the most reaction, was from someone called Devin Erickson, who apparently is according to his description, a sci-fi author, engineer, sharpshooter, part-time demon prince. I don't know what that is, and not a cat. Well, that's a plus. He's not a cat. Let's share the screen, shall we? Producing. And Devin Erickson, share. Great. Now we have to do this part. We add it to the stage, and we're producing. Okay, so Mr. Devin Erickson. Ooh, wrong one. So he listed, I don't know, like 10 or 15 different things. So I just kind of wanted to go through some of them because some of them are very, some I agree, some I disagree. Revolvers are obsolete. Okay, let's just take that one instantly. Revolvers are not obsolete. You just don't know how to shoot them. Okay? To say that revolvers are obsolete is just stupid, really. I can understand, I guess, why someone might think that revolvers are obsolete. The problem you run into when you say revolvers are obsolete, 357 Magnum exists. None of these are loaded, by the way, guys. It's also why I'm not live on YouTube, because they hate this. But first of all, revolvers are great. Now, it takes a little bit of time to figure out how to shoot them if you're not used to it. But key advantages of something like a 357 Magnum or a revolver chambered in 357 Magnum is it's chambered in 357 Magnum first and foremost, but second of all, it can shoot 38 special, 38 plus P. So, if you're talking about end of the world scenarios, things like that, you have multiple caliber options with this. Now, I'm not going to get into these. There's more FUD lore, I guess, that follows around revolvers. And one of those is it's super simple. It's not complex. There's less that can go wrong, yada, yada, yada. Okay, well, that's not accurate at all. One of the problems you have with revolvers is it is actually a very complex mechanism inside here. This is more like a watch, okay? It's more like a analog watch, like a wind-up watch, something like that. The other problem you have is the indexing of the cylinder. So what that means is as the cylinder comes into the body, this has to index properly, okay? There is a little bit of a gap there, but it does have to index properly. If it's too far back, that's a problem, okay? It's also why you can't put your hand up here. Well, you can, but you're going to pay a price. It's also why you don't really ever see anyone suppressing revolvers, and no one's really trying, because you have pressure and gas loss here. Like, you can literally wobble it back and forth. The other problem with a revolver, or potential problem with the revolver, again, this is also kind of a delicate mechanism. So as you go to extract your spent casings, these can bend if you get out of whack with them. You can bend your extractor tube or whatever you want to call that. I don't know the technical term. The other part is you can see the little gap between the cylinder and like where the hammer is, right? So this area here. If you have a raised primer on a shell, on a bullet, that raised primer or a primer that's not seated fully can cause a malfunction and can cause your cylinder not to move, okay? And if the cylinder doesn't move as you pull the trigger, nothing's going to happen. The other thing is you can actually hold that and keep it from moving. So they're not without their flaws, but the thing is about a revolver too, 357 Magnum is kind of the tip of the spear when it comes to the Magnum cartridges. When he says that a revolver is obsolete, he obviously has never been in bear country and doesn't even understand what bear country is. Because if you're in bear country, you want at least a 44 Magnum, if not a 500 Smith & Wesson. You can be walking around in the bush, in the woods with a rifle, as you should be, but the idea of getting a rifle on point, or if you're just hiking, you don't want to be hiking around with a rifle necessarily, especially a high caliber rifle. If you're just hiking or camping or whatever, you want to have something on you that can take out a bear if you're in bear country. So, revolvers, not obsolete. Sorry, Devin. What does he go into next? Next, he goes into 1911s are obsolete, which he piggybacks on. 2011s are obsolete because 1911s are obsolete. Again, just not factually true. You can't really replace a 1911 trigger, period. Like, you can get such a fantastic 1911 trigger. And actually, the thing about it is like he contradicts his own point. So 20 years ago, you really could have made the case that 1911s were obsolete because they have small capacity. You got a 7 or 8+1 round count. The mags are finicky. They're old. They take a lot of time to break in. You basically have to buy a Colt or some high-end Wilson Combat, something like that. But now that you have like STI kind of just basically created the market of the 2011. I think they created the 2011. They later became Staccato, which we all know and love now. I understand when you have a high-end pistol like that, you don't want to pay that premium. I get it. But you can get like the TSOS or the Mac or I'm forgetting some of the other kind of budgety 2011s that are out there. Hell, Kimber has a budget 2011 now at this point that I think they just released. And the thing that really changed the game with that was you have a double stack magazine of 9mm. So when you're talking about a full frame or even a compact frame, but steel framed, even if it's an aluminum body, aluminum receiver, you're talking about a pretty heavy pistol for pistol standards. So your recoil drops down to basically, it's so manageable. It's so great. And having a 9mm in that, you can just bang, 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 and you have a great trigger. Now, is it a daily carry thing? Not necessarily, but as far as like a something you put in your nightstand or something you walk around with the house or whatever it is. As a competition gun, it's tip top. So the idea that you could say a 1911 is obsolete because, 2 World Wars and 45 ACP and what have you. Like, the 45 cartridge has had its place. That place is now gone as far as I'm concerned. That might be a hot take, but like the 45 ACP or AARP, it is not a good cartridge when it comes to hollow points and expansion. It's just too slow. It's a big, heavy cartridge that hits pretty hard. Its range sucks, but it is a pistol. So if you want to have a 45 caliber in a 4 to 5 inch barrel, it's going to do the hurt that it needs to do, which is great. But if you're looking for like stopping and expansion and things like that, it is an obsolete caliber at this point. The 9mm can do pretty much anything a 19 or a 45 can do. It just does it better. Now, if you want to suppress a 45, it's already a subsonic cartridge, so you have that going for you. But again, you can move up. If you want to use 9mm, you can jump up to around 147 grain, and those can be subsonic. Get more bang out of a barrel, longer barrel if you want to do a sub gun, things of that nature. Even so, even if you're just like, I need that stopping power, blah, 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 fucking blah. Like 10mm exists as well, and you can get that in a double stack, or I think it's double stack. You can get that in a semi-auto, in a polymer gun. You can get that in a 1911. So you don't even have to change your weapon system, if you will. You can have the same pistol and just in a different, better caliber. So 45, as far as I'm concerned, is completely obsolete as a caliber. It just is. You're going to give up capacity for what? I don't understand that. But let's see. Where did he go next? Bolt action rifles are obsolete. Yeah, don't agree yet again, because obviously I'm not a hunter, but obviously you're not either. There are so many states where you literally can't hunt with a semi-auto. You have to have a bolt gun. There's plenty of states where you have to have a straight-walled cartridge. You can't have a necked cartridge. You can't use a 30-06. You have to use something like a 450. It has to be a straight-walled cartridge. There's some states, I think Minnesota just got to where you can actually hunt with a rifle, which sounds crazy. But it was like slug guns, and basically it's a rifled shotgun firing a sabot. or a Sabo, whatever the hell they call it. Savage Sabo. I don't know. I'm fucking American, not fucking French. Anyway, but bolt action rifles definitely have their place. They also have their place in that they're inherently more accurate than a gas gun, shot to shot. Sorry, but they are. The other thing is like you can get a longer barrel with a less weight overall out of a bolt gun. It's just, if you're going to have a bolt, the other thing is, now if we get into like legalities, just even outside of hunting, there's places like Virginia now where you can't have like a detachable magazine, semi-automatic, anything at this point. So while not ideal, as the great Paul Harrell once told us, although not ideal, a bolt action gun, like something like this, if it's your only means of defense, I would much rather have a bolt action 30 caliber, Mauser, Mosin, infield, whatever it is, than nothing. I mean, something's better than nothing. I would rather have a bolt gun than a shotgun, I think. I mean, if I had to have one, it said, okay, my budget is one gun and I'm in a restricted commie state. Am I going with the pump action shotgun, or do I want to go with a bolt action rifle? Now, it doesn't have to be one of these wood and steel World War II era weapons. You can get a Ruger. Ruger's got bolt guns out there, Savage, Mossberg. They have like scout and patrol rifles and things that are a little more compact with a big caliber that have iron sights on them, and also have pick rails and things like that, so you can put optics on them, what have you. Like, you can get that stuff. I would much rather have like a scout rifle or something like that than a 12 gauge shotgun to do multiple things if I just had to have one gun. So again, don't agree with Devin there. Okay. Iron sights on rifles are obsolete. I pretty much agree. I mean, I have backup iron sights like on my ARs and stuff, but they're backup iron sights. It's like, if the other thing fails, I still have a sighting system. So if the optic is damaged and I didn't realize it, or if I damage it in the middle of doing something, I still have a way to aim. I still have the backup sights. There's still some of them I need to get backup sights for, but suffice it to say, the Barrett AR that I have there has backup sights. This is a M16A. This is a Colt 723 replica. So it has the carry handle with rear sight, front A2 front sight, and an A1 rear sight. If you know what that means, then good for you. But it has backup sights. There's still a couple more that I need to get backup sights for, but they're not like my go-to rifle. My go-to rifle right there has a Holosun circle dot optic, which I like the circle dot for some reason. I just do. I feel like I can index it better, but it also has backup Magpul Gen 2 backup sights. Just like the backup sights. I'm going to take this off of here, and I'm just going to read this to you, and you guys can just listen to me read it. Iron sights on pistols will soon be obsolete. Do not agree. 100% do not agree. Now, I have been somewhat vocal in the past about red dots on pistols. Now, that said, I currently am one of my main carry, my main CCW is the Glagger 9. So it's a hybrid between a Glock 23 bottom with a dagger, PSA dagger saber, complete slide on it. And yes, I have a red dot on it. Technically green dot, but whatever. I'm not getting into semantics here. The point is, it also has co-witness backup iron sights. One of the reasons it has the backup iron sights, and that was one of the keys for me on that carry pistol, is because, I have a Siley optic on there. It's not this Siley optic, but it's, same company, but both of them have the shake away on them. Okay, so this pistol can sit here. I don't have to worry about turning the optic off or turning it down, turning it on, blah, blah, blah. So as it sits here and is motionless, it will go off. Well, here's the thing. When you're carrying a pistol, when are you ever motionless? So there you go. So battery life becomes a thing. Now, yes, you should be monitoring your optic and all of those things and what have you and blah, blah, blah. But shit happens. You forget, it goes out when you didn't think it was going to go out, whatever. The last thing you want is when you pull your pistol and you need it in a defense situation and the goddamn battery's out. So you'd like a way to, aim. So backup sights are there. Pistols are always going to have sights on them. Sorry. They're going to. And that's something you would say if you thought that a revolver was obsolete. Because, yeah, they're starting to come out with revolvers where they have an optic, mounting system and this and that. I'm very dubious of that over time. One is you get into like magnum calibers, but also, again, when we're talking about like where the cylinder index is and you get the gas loss and you get the blowout there, I don't know. But the thing is, also with revolvers, is they have always had very good sights, drift adjustable sights, things like that. Especially like this Smith & Wesson 686, you're able to take this whole sight piece off and replace it with an upgraded, advanced, more of a target sight, more of, whatever you wanted to do. These basically were like one gun to do it all as far as self-defense and then home defense and also competition and all of that. The other thing about revolvers that I didn't mention before is when you're talking about different calibers and different loads and different, so like as most of you probably know, a 357 Magnum, as I mentioned before, you can shoot 38 Special and 38 Special plus P. Okay, you don't have to worry about any sort of like recoil system that's like on like on this Dagger, which is just a Glock knockoff, basically Gen 3 knockoff. If you're using different powered ammunition, it is a concern that the slide is unable to be pushed all the way back in its blowback scenario, where it may not come all the way back and you might get kind of a short stroke and you get some sort of like stovepiping or failure to eject, failure to feed, things like that. You don't have to worry about that on a revolver ever. There's no failure to ejects, failure to feeds, things like that. You don't have to worry about what load your cartridge is, if it's a low power load or a high power load, because it's all just kind of a mechanical thing. Okay? So that's kind of another plus in the revolver column is even if it's a squib load, like, I've upgraded the trigger bar and trigger spring in this, so it's more of a light. Like you can tune it, Wilson Combat trigger spring and trigger bar in this, so I can tune this. And plus, this doesn't have the transfer bar; it has an actual spurred hammer on it. See if you can see that, see the spur there. So I've had, over time with 357 loads, I had to tune it because I wasn't getting a strong enough strike to actually ignite the cartridge. When that happens, if that happens in this pistol, it's a tap and rack. It might be a drop the mag, clear the round, put the mag back, what have you. In this, you just pull the trigger again, and it keeps going. So there is some sort of like better reliability for a revolver. What was I on here? Yeah, the iron sights on pistols, they're not soon to be obsolete. There's any number of people. There was another person this week, one of my mutuals that I follow, that had a Trigicon red dot on his pistol, and he showed the picture of where the glass had broken, asked him what happened. He said he dropped it. Okay. No knock on Trigicon. Everybody has problems, but if you're talking about just a drop from a normal height, 4 feet, 3 feet, 5 feet, whatever it is, bench height to ground, destroyed the optic, that's a problem. Now, does that mean the emitter and the light went out? No, not necessarily, but when you're talking about now the glass is all shattered in there, that becomes kind of a problem. It's kind of a cool look. But the point is, pistol sights, iron sights are not going to be obsolete anytime soon. Let's see. Any magazine that malfunctions when you rest the rifle on its base plate is defective. Throw it away. Yeah, that was just basically the M14. So, again, I'm not here. I'm not here to insult Devin or anything like that. He just had a really good post with a whole bunch of stuff on it. I'm glad he posted it because I thought it was really cool. Any handguard that won't hold zero for mounted aiming devices is defective. Throw it away. Duh. It's just kind of a duh. Most people have too much shit on their AR. Could not agree more. It is funny that after you said hold zero for mounted aiming devices, it's like, yeah, I agree. There's too much shit on your AR. There is. Okay, and it's a rookie move. It's a rookie move that I made because it was one of those things like, I got my first AR. I got to get a pistol grip on it or foregrip or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with foregrips or pistol grips or anything like that. But it's like, okay, I got to get this. I got to get this. I got to get this. I remember when I first got my AR, I was like, I need to put a scope on it. Actually, that was when I first got my Mini. I was like, I'm going to put a scope on it. It's like, you're an idiot. I was an idiot. But one of the weird things about the AR, and I was listening to a podcast earlier today that they were talking about this, is like, so this Colt 723, let me move QP here. He's watching us all. One of the interesting things, can he grab it without causing a scene? So, one of the interesting things about this rifle, so I built this as a rifle of the Delta rifle, the Colt 723, what would be kind of the Gordy base, 16-inch barrel though, not a 14.5. Anyway, the funny thing about this rifle, I have this Colt replica optic on there. When you take this Colt replica optic off here, it's such a huge change, and you realize how light this rifle initially was. And that was the whole point, kind of the whole AR-15 / M16 project, was that we had a light rifle. It's like 6 pounds. A 6-pound rifle. Now, this has the government / M4 profile barrel on it, so it's a little heavier than like your pencil barrels would have been. Nothing crazy, but it is a little more front heavy than like an original M16A1 would have been. But a 6-pound rifle, and this is a 20-round magazine, a 6-pound rifle with 20-round magazine, I think they ended up at 25 before we ended up going to 30. That's crazy light. And that's the thing that people are starting to lose with their modern AR setup. Put that back. Arrest QP back. He's here in spirit. The angry owl is here in spirit. So that's the whole thing about the AR, is that it's supposed to be light. It's a light caliber as far as recoil. It's just a really small bullet moving really, really fast. You know, when you have these battle rifles from World War II and they're iron and they're wood, you want that. You want a heavy rifle. You know, I think the Kar 98K up there is something like a 8-9 pound rifle. You want that. Believe me, you want that when you're firing an 8mm Mauser. You want something that can absorb the recoil without a doubt. You think that an 8mm, any of the 30 caliber cartridge World War II things, like, you definitely want that, because that's a big cartridge. That's a big boy cartridge. The AR is shooting a high powered 22. You don't need a heavy rifle. It should not be heavy. So as you keep adding shit to your rifle, you're just making it heavier and heavier and heavier. And that's not the point of it. The whole point, like the Barrett there, that Barrett has the optic, a minimal flashlight, a sling, and backup iron sights. That's it. That rifle, as in its current configuration, is less than 8 pounds with the loaded full magazine on it. Might be 8. Yeah, it's like 8 pounds. I need to weigh it again. But even with the magazine, you're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 8.5 pounds. That's crazy light with 30 rounds. So quit putting all this shit on your damn rifle. You don't need an IR. You don't need a laser. You know, you don't need the fancy like flashlight thing with the tape switch. If you want to do that, that's fine, I guess. If you just want to throw the money at it. I did an R-socket mount on it that weighs nothing. And I use my thumb and I push it. I just put it in a position where I can just push my thumb on it. I don't have any sort of foregrip, anything like that. I'm keeping it light, you know? That thing you can walk around with all day long. You don't need all of this crazy shit on your rifle. You just don't. So stop doing that. You know, if you think you need, like, maybe you do have night vision and you want night vision, you know, capable rifle. That's fine. Build one. You know, put a light barrel on it. You know, because if your night vision rifle, you're not going to be dumping thousands of rounds through it at once or even hundreds. Like, it's just the thing about like the AR itself. One of the best things about the AR is the serialized part, the rifle itself, is just the lower. So you can get multiple uppers. You can build multiple uppers in the configuration you want. So if you want one that's a setup with an IR laser because you've got nods and you've got all that stuff, you can just put the upper on there. You can do a shorter barrel, longer barrel, any number of things like that. Instead of, or you can just buy all the different rifles and do whatever you want to do. But the point is like you can take any one of those ARs there are interchangeable on anything. So I'm not sure. I'm kind of trailing on that one. There was another person that put something on here that was in that same vein of something to the effect of the 223 cartridge sucks out of anything except the 20-inch barrel, which is just stupid. Just a dumb thing to actually post. Anyway, so next one up, where I do agree with Mr. Devin Erickson here, the AK platform is no longer competitive with the modern AR, and it's not been in decades. Okay. Once ARs kind of became ubiquitous and you just really, I mean, the AK, it sucks. They're cool, but when you're talking about like a weapons system and a weapons platform, the AK sucks. No one's picking it. And anyone who is picking it, good luck. You know, you can talk all the shit you want about the 5.56 round and it can't do this and it can't reach out and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Neither can buy 39 either. And the 5.45 whatever round was even worse. Even the AK guys hate it. So yeah, AK platform might look cool, might be very historically, cool, but stop wasting your money on AKs. They suck. And the biggest thing about the AK back in the day was it's super reliable and it's more reliable than the AR and this and that and blah, blah, blah. Those days are long gone. And the AR is more accurate. It's just as if not more reliable. It's ubiquitous with parts, replacements, tuning, all of that. The science is in on the AR. It's better than the AK. So, fuck off, commies. Let's see. This is another one where I agree. Most exotic and less popular chamberings don't give enough additional performance to justify themselves. How many different AR calibers have we seen come and go? 458 SOCOM, this 6.5 Creedmoor thing. I don't know if that's going to stick around. But then there's I forget what the other one is that's supposed to compete with like 8.6 Blackout. 224 Valkyrie, there's been any number of things that have come and gone, and it just doesn't just stop, just all of those different things. It just doesn't work. And then this will piggyback into the next one. He said, 300 Blackout is a solution in search of a problem. Anything it can do, something else does better. Yeah, except for the fact that it was used for like special operations and SOCOM to actually put people down in war. So there you go. And it was a quick solution in the AR platform. See, here's the thing about 300 Blackout, and this is going to be somewhat true. Well, it is true for like 8.6 Blackout. Should have named it 8.6 Cosby. Just throwing that out there, Birmingham. You guys were this close to calling it 8.6 Cosby, from what I understand. Should have done it. Anyway. But 8.6 Blackout and 300 Blackout share one thing that is just so perfectly done, in that It uses the same magazines. So if I have a 5.56 magazine, whether it's the Magpul, anything else, I can put 300 blackout in it and it functions perfectly. No problems. I don't have to change a bolt. The only thing I really have to change is a barrel. And again, with the upper swaps, I just swap an upper on. Again, this is a 300 blackout. This lower receiver can go on any of those 5.56 guns and vice versa. You know, this upper can go on that Barrett AR-15, and now I have a 300 blackout. I don't need a new magazine. I don't need a new bolt. I don't need a new spring or anything like that. The only thing that really changes it is I've got a suppressed 300 blackout. So the gas system typically should work. That's the only thing you could run into, but you're changing the gas system at that point. So anything you change the gas system on, you're going to have that issue. But pop the suppressor off, no problems whatsoever. You're going to run fine. That's the same thing with the 8.6 blackout. 8.6 is going to run off the SR25, your 308, your AR-10s. It's going to use the same magazines. Pop it in and let's go. Just need a new barrel from what I understand. Everything else, boom, rocks and rolls. That's the thing about 300 blackout. You know, on that tweet, he said, what did he say? Anything it can do, something else does better. Yeah, except subsonic. That's really the thing about the 300 blackout and the 8.6 blackout, is you're getting some crazy terminal performance out of a subsonic round that is quiet. No ear pro kind of quiet. Not sure what else actually does that and, you know, performs the same way. So, you know, I'm not 100% like dead on, well-versed, super expert in all the calibers out there. But as far as I can tell, 300 and 8.6 blackout are really the only ones that suppress well and suppress to the point where you don't need ear protection. You know, you got 7.62 by 51 or 308. Yeah, you can suppress it. You still got to wear ear pro. Same with like 5.56. All the other rounds, they're supersonic rounds. Still got to wear ear pro. So, you know, if you take this 300 blackout rifle that I have here that's suppressed, and I have a home invader, my ears are going to thank me after I win that fight because I'm not going to be deaf. The other thing is like, if you're in a 2A range situation, your signature of where you're firing from is going to be much less pronounced, not only potentially through flash, but through sound on something that's actually subsonic, a subsonic round. Okay. So there's that. And the other part is with a 300 blackout and the 8.6 blackout, you're a mag change away from going supersonic and really reaching out and touching, you know, different ranges and really putting some heavy duty bullets on something. And you don't have to change anything except the magazine. You just swap to different ammunition. Okay. This is probably one of the more controversial things that he posted is there is no reason to buy a Glock for any purpose whatever because there are clones better than the real thing. Now, better is debatable. Just as good, not really debatable. Whether you're talking about the dagger, this is generally $350 to $400 depending on your configuration or what cell you can find. I would tell you that if you're a baller on a budget and you want a really good pistol that is Glock, you know, Gen 3 compatible and clone, I would go get the Bear Creek Arsenal Grizzly. This is their full size. They now have it in a compact size. There are those that have been around me that have, one, they've seen me shoot it, but they've even shot it themselves. This has a better trigger than the dagger. This actually has a very good trigger. I mean, that's a really good trigger. Compare that to the dagger. Not a good trigger. Good gun, not a good trigger. So I would tell you to baller on a budget, really want to get something cool. First of all, you can get it in zombie green. You can also get it in black, but that's not fun. I would buy that Bear Creek Arsenal. No problems with it. I've shot the shit out of it, over 1,000 rounds through it. I think I've had one failure to extract. I've never cleaned it. You know, my buddy Mert, who's in the chat, or at least was earlier, he still tells me I need to clean it. I've never cleaned this damn thing. I got it. Day one, I got it. I went through it and just cleaned it up a little bit, ran a bore brush through it and oiled it up a little bit just to make sure there were no, like, you know, pieces from manufacturing that were stuck in the bore, the chamber, anything like that. And I do that with everything that I get because you got Mondays and Fridays at factories and you just never know. So outside of that, never done anything to it. I mean, you can see just on the muzzle how dirty it is. I don't know if that'll clean off because I've never tried. You see on the grip, I've shot the shit out of this thing. I've thrown it around. I got the side of the optic on it. I threw it over my shoulder once, among other things. I would buy that gun, no problem. That was given to me, sent to me free of charge. I had to pay for the transfer, but Bear Creek sent that to me. That is one of the better pistols that I own. It's definitely reliable. It takes Glock mags, Glock 17 mags, and it's fantastic. The only downside of the Bear Creek Arsenal Grizzly is it ships with KCI mags, and those KCI mags have given me issues. Those are the only issues I've ever really had out of this is when I'm using those KCI mags. When I use the Glock mags, no problem whatsoever. None. So, no reason to buy a Glock for any purpose, whatsoever is probably what he meant. Not necessarily going to agree with that, but I can see where he's coming from. Glock still is, they're the industry standard. They are. And they're the industry standard for a reason. You know, is their polymer better? Maybe. One of the things I want to point out on my dagger here is you see the tape. This is just athletic tape that I bought off of Amazon, the Amazons.coms. And the reason I have it is the texture on the dagger is good. The problem is when you conceal carry this and you don't wear an undershirt, or even if you do wear an undershirt, it's so aggressive that there's been times where I didn't wear an undershirt and it starts to, at the end of the day, you start to kind of feel it. Well, that also works on your hand. And so what I've done is I use this athletic tape, one, because you can create kind of a fake palm swell, if you will. So you can get it to where it'll fit kind of in your palm or fit around, you know, the fat of your hand or even your fingers, but also it provides grip. It provides grip also when your hands are sweaty. So it's whether your hands are sweaty or whether your hands are dry, it provides a really good grip and it has kind of a little give to it. And I like that. I do that with a lot of stuff that I have. I do like having the athletic tape around just to use on things like that. I have it on my hybrid Glagger that I carry because the Glock texturing, mine is a Gen 3, Gen 2, Gen 3 Glock 23, and the texturing on that was really bad. It's okay if your hands are dry, but if your hands are like a little sweaty or anything like that, it's really bad. So I put that on there and the problem solved. And it didn't cost me anything. And that's another one of the things that I want to talk about that's a really dumb gun accessory that I see out there, that I see that, you know, different people are pushing, is that like the Talon grips or the Grip It grips or whatever. Basically that like grip tape. I always call it like skateboard grip tape that you can put on your pistol that creates a very, 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 sandpapery kind of grip or anything very aggressive. Like, it's just unnecessary. You're going to pay somewhere between $50 to $150 for those. You're going to put them on there, and they're going to be super aggressive, and you could just use athletic tape. And you're like, oh, but it might come off. Yeah. You get like 3 rolls of this for like $7, and you get it in different colors if you want. And it's good for all kinds of stuff. And if you hurt yourself, if you fuck your finger up, you can always tape them together because it is athletic tape. Stuff's great. You should have athletic tape just because. But yeah, anyway, I don't know. I can see a need for buying a Glock, but here we go. This one will be controversial with me because of my fandom. But he says 5.7 is a great cartridge. I agree. But it will never make significant inroads into the concealed handgun market because all of its advantages go away without an awkwardly long barrel. I hate how accurate he is because, so this is my Ruger 5.7. If you're not familiar with the 5.7 cartridge, 5.7 cartridge created by FN for the what was it, the back of the bus kind of weapon, an intermediate cartridge that could be loaded into a pistol or a rifle scenario. And the idea really is that it is a pistol cartridge, or it's a intermediate rifle cartridge neck down to fit pistols. So you're talking, what is it, a 40 grain projectile going at like 2,500 feet per second or faster, depending on your barrel length, and ballistic tip, and really causing some speedy damage. Well, the thing is that when you take a cartridge and you speed it up, that's fine, but the second you start shortening barrels down, your speed goes away because your dwell time is less. So the idea that you could have like a, what is this? This Ruger 5.7, I believe, is a 5-inch barrel technically, maybe 4. I can't remember off the top of my head. If you wanted to take that and do it in something like a compact where you have a 3-inch barrel, you're really compromising the round. To his point, which he didn't make the point, but I will make the point, the round is a pretty long round. Okay, that's not a huge deal. It's long and skinny. The problem comes in is now your grip now has to accommodate the magazine of a long and skinny round, which is okay. The grip on this is great. You get good purchase, you get all of that stuff, and it's not, maybe there might be some ladies out there that are not a huge fan because their hands are a little smaller, even some of you dainty dudes. The problem comes in is now it throws off your ergonomics. So like your magazine release, that is I have to release my grip to get to a magazine release. So contrast that with the dagger, which is just a Glock 19 clone. It's always kind of right there. This, I guess you could two-hand it or something. Probably they should have went with a paddle, but Americans hate the paddle, like the what is it, the European German paddle release. The paddle actually probably would work better on this, but that's one of the bigger downfalls of the 5.7 is all the ergonomics get quite a bit funky. Same thing with when you're trying to two-hand. You're indexing your thumb, things like that. It just, I don't know. Never really going to be a carry pistol, unfortunately. Good pistol, cool cartridge. I mean, you could take, so this, the Ruger 5.7, the standard magazine is 20 rounds plus 1. So 2 magazines, they weigh nothing, by the way. And the recoil, it's a loud round because it's, it's fast little speedy boy. But the actual round itself is very, very lightweight. So 2 magazines, you're 40 to 41 rounds. That's a lot of bang for not a lot of weight. Let's see. Appendix carry isn't actually better. It just has different strengths and weaknesses. Yeah, fair enough. This is the best one he did, though. 40 Smith & Wesson only exists because the FBI are retards. Completely accurate. And that's a bigger discussion that I wanted to have. So all modern firearms ballistics and testing and effectiveness, if you will, or what is considered effectiveness within the firearms world, or the handgun world, I should say, is all based on the 1986 Miami shootout between 2 bank robbers and 7 FBI agents. And if you think I'm lying, you can look it up. That's what everything is based off of. That's where your gel testing and your penetration and your expansion and all of this stuff comes from. It's also where the 40 Smith & Wesson cartridge eventually is mainstream developed out of. I believe the story, as I can slightly recall from Lucky Gunner, is that I believe it was Elmer Keith wanted some sort of cartridge that was smaller than 45, bigger than 9mm for hunting. And so he and buddy of his came up with the basics of a 40 Smith & Wesson cartridge. I think they called it like the 40 Special or something like that. It never really went anywhere. They wanted it for specific use. No one wanted to make it, blah, blah, blah. You have the 1986 Miami shootout, in which I believe 2 agents were killed. They took on 2 bank robbers, one who was armed with a Mini 14. Shout out to the Mini 14 assault rifle. And the other, I believe, was armed with a 12-gauge shotgun. And all of the cops were either armed with 38 special pistols. One had a 9mm Smith & Wesson semi-automatic. I forget the exact designation, but it's that cool one they need to bring back. At least it was that generation. And 12-gauge shotguns as well. It did not go well. In the aftermath, they ended up winning the gunfight. The FBI agents did. In the aftermath and the forensics of it all, they realized that one of the shooters, one of the bank robbers, had been shot, I believe, through the arm, went through his arm and into his chest cavity, hitting one lung, but was not a kill shot. This was the Winchester silver tip hollow point ammo, which to this day, with some people, has a very, very bad reputation. They deemed in that shooting that the 9mm, which the officer who had that pistol and made that shot, they deemed that they knew their 38 specials were not powerful enough, but they deemed because that bullet did not penetrate sufficiently to take him out of the fight, that the 9mm was insufficient for duty use of the FBI. That meant that they now needed a bigger cartridge. The bigger cartridge, as far as they were concerned, was the 10mm cartridge, because that was the most powerful cartridge in a semi-automatic that existed at the time. Problems with 10mm, it's very recoil heavy. It's a heavy round, period. And you have a lot of different people in the FBI who are going to be issued a firearm who are not necessarily ever going to actually have to use that firearm, but they do have to qualify and they do have to train with it. So they realized that the 10mm, not only they gave Smith & Wesson the contract for the pistols, because Smith & Wesson had a 10mm they could get to market basically instantly. Good old boy system probably at work there as well. Smith & Wesson gets it to market. It's not working out. Guns have reliability issues. Anyway, they end up developing the 40 Smith & Wesson, hence why it's called 40 Smith & Wesson. It's a 40 caliber round that is more powerful than a 9mm, but more manageable than a 10mm. It's also why 40 Smith & Wesson is known as 10mm short. I say all of this to tell you that all of your ballistics testing is based on this. All of your ballistics effectiveness is based on this whole thing from 1986. Okay? I firmly believe that this is FUD lore now, because not only is 9mm a viable cartridge, which most of us know that and agree, we're putting too much emphasis on the penetration test in gel. Okay? There are any number of factors that go into an effective pistol cartridge. I believe that you need to factor in your barrel length first and foremost. You need to factor in your strengths as a shooter. If you have something like a SIG P365, which has a 3.1-inch barrel, you need to be shooting something that really is coming out of there hot. 90 grain Underwood, 115 grain, something like that. You also need to understand that with the shorter barrel, you're trying to get more speed in a shorter amount of time. So, like, this is before we factor in recoil. Shooting a 147 grain 9mm out of a 3.1 inch barreled concealed carry pistol is just a bad idea as far as I'm concerned. You're just asking for all of the wrong things to happen. Oh, but they penetrate this and they expand that, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, I get it. You need to have something. I firmly believe that you need to abandon the traditional, if you're talking about a concealed carry pistol with a three-ish inch barrel, you need to abandon the hollow point concept almost completely. You need to adopt the external hollow points like the G9s or the Lehigh / Underwood kind of cavitators, if you will. The penetrators, the what looks like a, the Underwood / Lehigh bullet looks like a Phillips head screwdriver with the tip kind of cut off. Those don't rely upon impact and expansion to cause the wound cavity. They rely on the natural twist of the rifling, and they rely on the material at which it hits, which the material it's going to hit, which you're trying to take out of the fight, or if you're a hunter, the material is going to be water-based, and it's going to create more of a pressure change / explosion. Not like a traditional explosion, but it's going to do something similar to what like a tank round does when it shoots another tank. We've all seen the movies, which are pretty much completely wrong. One tank shoots another tank, and tank explodes with a big ball of fire. That's not really how tank rounds work. They really work is they penetrate one side and create such a pressure change on the inside that it pops the top off. That's what you're doing with like an external hollow point. And the reason you kind of want to do that is because your dwell time is a lot less. And so hollow points are effective and rely upon expansion. If you can't propel that bullet fast enough, this is like what I was talking about the 45 ACP earlier. If that bullet's not going fast enough out of the end of that barrel, you're never going to get the proper expansion of that hollow point, and you might as well be shooting like FMJ rounds at whatever you're shooting at. That's before we get into barriers, if it's a windshield or whatever it might be, drywall, windshields, blah, 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 heavy clothing, leather heavy clothing, denim heavy clothing. This is one of the problems you see with like a 380. And I was looking at it not too long ago. Lucky Gunner did a ton of work and showed pictures and did all kinds of ammo. And you can go look at it at luckygunner.com in their blog section where they tested 380 loads of different companies, different loadings, different grain weights, all of that, and showed even the pictures of an original round unfired and then the 5 rounds that they fired. And so many of the 380 hollow points, the way they did their tests is they fired it in a gel, but they had a cloth, I think it was a denim and then like a cloth t-shirt that they fired through. And so many of those 380 hollow point rounds still were unexpanded and had the cloth and denim in them still in the picture, because they don't have enough oomph, enough dwell time to actually expand. So the whole point of a hollow point, pardon the pun, you're not actually getting the benefit. So they didn't test any of the external hollow points like the G9 or the Underwood or Lehigh. Lehigh and Underwood are the same. Lehigh makes the projectile, Underwood makes the whole package. They didn't test any of those, and that's fine. But those don't rely upon expansion, so the odds of those actually causing a kill shot are much, much higher. So my point to this whole thing is I think we need to reevaluate where we're at in first of all, what we consider actual ballistic testing, effective ballistic testing, and we need to also factor in modern ammunition and what it's doing, and we need to understand the ballistics of it from a dwell time, speed, feet per second aspect. If you're shooting most of these tests, that most of the information on the side of the box of the ammunition that you buy are going to be shot out of 4-inch pistols, 4-inch barreled pistols, or pistols with 4-inch barrels. Most of what I've ever seen doesn't tell you what kind of expansion to expect out of that 4-inch pistol necessarily. So what I run in my Glock 19 clone, whatever you want to call it, I'm doing 135 grain Hornady critical defense. So I'm kind of splitting the difference. We're a little heavier than 124. We're less than 147 grain weight, but we should be projecting and propelling that thing pretty fast, and it has a little ballistic tip in it. So the odds of it getting anything in that tip and then before it actually hits and it, what have you, all that gets cut down. But the point of this is, I think that gel testing and all of the stuff we've come up to believe that's based on the 1986 shootout in Miami, I think now is FUD lore. And I think we need to start adopting different bullet technologies, not just everything has to be a hollow point, a traditional hollow point. I think we need to start understanding that a lighter weight projectile that's an external hollow point actually is going to be a better effective, all-around effective defensive round, whether we're talking about animals or humans. And then when you factor in barriers of windshields or doors or whatever it is, car doors, regular doors, wood doors, I think you're going to be much, much better off. We're all going to be much better off with some sort of like external hollow point. Anyway. I'm up to an hour and 11 minutes. There was a couple of more things I wanted to get to, but I'm not going to get to tonight. I've already waxed on poetic enough. I guess one of the things to think about, one of the topics I wanted to talk about, but I didn't get there, but it's something, food for thought, is someone in that same thread, repost or whatever, mentioned, you don't need a $3,000 Geisley rifle. Accurate. You do not need nice rifles. You don't need a $3,000 Geisley rifle. You really don't. So that spawned another conversation of take the same $3,000 and then spend it on whatever. Food for thought. If you were given, or if you had $3,000, what would be your advice to someone, or what advice do you seek on what $3,000 would be best spent on? Or, you can always come down and say $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever. Anyway, food for thought. Maybe I'll get into it next episode. We'll see. But either way, something to think about. If you had $1,500, $2,000, if you're someone who's in the gun world and has some experience, what would be your advice to that person who had $3,000? Think about training, holsters, belts, any number of things, rifle, pistols, ammunition, classes. One of the responses, one of the things I didn't see in any of the responses was an IFAK. Individual first aid kit, stop the bleed kit, something like that. We're talking about projectiles moving at a high rate of speed. You might want to have something on hand to at least slow the speed at which, if something goes wrong, the speed at which you bleed out. So just food for thought. Anyway, everybody, thanks for hanging out. Till next time, everybody stay safe. Make yourselves harder to kill. Shoot, and more shoot. And till next time, peace.